Hi, I'm Christy. Welcome to Weird and Witchy Shit, a place for, weird and witchy shit. Here we talk about everything from the magic of yoga, rituals, tarot, crystals, astrology, self-love, mental health, spiritual stuff, spooky things, and anything of the mystical variety. So if that sounds like the kind of shit you're into, then you're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to the coven. Today, let's talk about the mythology behind Gemini, but before we get into it, let's go over a few basic Gemini facts. So, Gemini is the third sign of the zodiac, following Taurus. Gemini season is between May 21st and June 20th. It's an air sign of positive polarity, meaning that it's a masculine sign. Gemini is a mutable sign, meaning that it falls at the end of a season, and the end of the season that Gemini falls at would be spring. The ruling planet for Gemini is Mercury, and the associated tarot card is the Lovers. Some keywords that you often hear associated with Gemini are social, flirtatious, communicative, cunning, fickle, unpredictable, intellectual, and adaptable. Gemini, as I'm sure you probably know, is associated with the twins, which adds into the theory that Geminis are very often two-sided. People I've often heard describe Gemini as two-faced. I wouldn't describe a Gemini as two-faced, but definitely two-sided. Like, you never kind of know what you're going to get. Like, one day you could see them and they're in like the best mood. They're like, oh my god, I'm so happy to like see you. I'm like, and then the next time you could see them, they could be like, you. And I don't think it's like a two-faced thing. I do just think it's that's what their internal world is like. And I think, if anything, they're not really being two-faced. They're kind of just being true to how they're feeling in that moment, and don't often hide very well how they're feeling. In my experience, a Gemini wouldn't really sugarcoat things to you, and I actually really appreciate that. So that is probably the reason why most of my best friends are Gemini. Not all of them, most of them. Anyway, the mythology behind Gemini is that of two brothers, which is Castor and Pollux. Their mother was Leda, who was a princess who later became the Queen of Sparta, and their father's like a little bit more confusing. So Castor's father was Leda's husband, and he was the king of Sparta, whereas Pollux's father was actually Zeus, who had seduced Leda by turning himself into a beautiful swan. If you watched the Taurus episode, we spoke about Zeus turning himself into animals. So the boys weren't actually technically twins, but they were as close as twins could be. Best friends, inseparable. I'm thinking Jedward. However, there was one really big difference between the boys due to their different fathers. So Castor, whose dad was the king of Sparta, was immortal, and Pollux, whose dad was Zeus, was immortal. So Castor and Pollux fell in love with another pair of sisters, but unfortunately for them, the sisters were actually already spoken for. The girls were already with cousins of Castor and Pollux, but that didn't really bother the boys, and they basically tried to seduce the girls anyway, and this resulted in a huge big family rivalry. And this will be something that I will cover more in detail in the future if we want to do an episode about Troy and the Trojan War, because Helen of Troy, who I'm sure you've probably at least heard the name of, the Trojan War was actually basically started over her, and she was actually the sister of Castor and Pollux. We won't get into that here, like I said. I just thought it was a pretty cool fact to mention. Anyway, Castor and Pollux are fighting with their cousins over these girls, and unfortunately this leads to Castor being killed. Pollux can't go on without his brother. Like, he's never known a life without him, and he doesn't want to know a life without him, let alone live for literal eternity without him. So he goes to his father Zeus, and he begs him to let him share his immortality with his brother. So with this agreement, it meant that the boys would spend half of their time on Mount Olympus with the gods, and the other half of the time they would spend in the underworld with the dead. And if you ask me, that's about as Gemini as you get. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can get me on Instagram at kristys_coven. That's KRISTYS_coven. You can also find me on YouTube at Kristys Coven, where I post a lot of free yoga classes and shit like that. And I'd love to have you join, because it's not a coven if it's just me. And until next time, bye!